Good afternoon and welcome to the Gifford Fire Informational Community Meeting for Sunday, August 10th. My name is Nathan Judy, Information Officer for California Interagency Team 5. I will be your facilitator for today's meeting. Today you'll hear from members of our Unified Command Team and our partners. After the formal presentation of the briefing, we will take questions that were submitted online, questions that are written in email earlier today, and of course, the question that you have in this room. We have comment cards in the back of the room. We ask that you fill those cards out. If you do have questions, please raise your hand with those cards, and an information officer will come take those for you so we can answer those again at the end of the presentation. Currently, the fire is at 117,524 acres. We are now at 32% contained, just shy of 4,000. Definitely. Yep, a little bit more containment's great to see, right? We're almost at 4,000 personnel in this fire, so we got a lot of folks out here helping to fight this fire, protect your communities. First up, we're going to go ahead and bring up CAL FIRE's local unit chief, John Owens.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this meeting so you can get some current information on the Gifford fire and ask any questions that you need answered. And Nathan mentioned that we're in unified command, and what that means is that we have the United States Forest Service, CAL FIRE, San Luis Obispo County Fire, and Santa Barbara County Fire, and Santa Barbara County Sheriffs in unified command in the overall in charge of the fire. But the people that are out on the fire lines consist not only of CAL FIRE and United States Forest Service and Santa Barbara County personnel, but also local government fire personnel from all over the state of California and the United States, and also private contractors that have been hired to assist. So it's a really a unified team effort. You heard the amount of people that are assigned to this fire. Is a very large fire, which requires very large force to fight it and bring it under control. And I'd like to introduce Chris Bilecki from the United States Forest Service, one of our partners in the Unified Command.
Okay, thank you, Chief Owens. So obviously here to represent the U.S. Forest Service, but we cannot reiterate enough, we are here in a unified fashion. While our agencies on a day-to-day basis may have different missions, our mission in this project, if you would call it that, is clear, and that's to put the fire out with full suppression authority and tactics. And so we have no question as far as how we approach that, and we are truly on the same page, making decisions together. You're going to hear from other folks. One of the challenges we work through is identifying our values between the different agencies, partners, stakeholders, cooperators. So life and property are always going to be our top priorities. Then we get into infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and other infrastructure. And then we get into natural and cultural resources. In a perfect scenario, we could address all of that, but sometimes we have to make some difficult decisions to focus on what the top priorities are. So with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it off to folks that have more operational information. Next up, Unified Operations Section Chief, Nate Ham.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nate Ham. I'm one of the Gifford Incident Unified Operations Section Chiefs, as well as one of the local battalion chiefs for San Luis Obispo County. So I'd like to start off, and I'm going to move around just a tiny bit. I'd like to start off with just a quick update, reference to the map about how we're doing. So fire is looking really, really good on the east side and the south side as it burns into Santa Barbara County, or as it was burning in Santa Barbara County. We have crews spiked out in the wilderness down here, the San Rafael Wilderness, and they're making great progress coming across. As we come around, coming up to Highway 166, great progress. Crews did a great job in there a couple days ago, made a really good stop, and they've improved some existing control lines through there. Coming north of Highway 166 into Alamo Creek, had a good firefight the other day, but fire's looking great in there. Crews are in there, improving those existing lines and looking really good. As we come through Wasna, and we come north of Wasna, close to High Mountain and the Garcia Wilderness, that's where we had a lot of problems the other day. That's where you saw some of that pretty intense fire behavior that was coming across. So, as most of you know, living here, the Garcia Wilderness has very little fire, well, no fire history, right? Zero fire history in the Garcia Wilderness, and not a lot of access. Very steep, very inaccessible terrain for our firefighters, and so they are going as direct as they can, which is direct along the wilderness and up to High Mountain Road around to Pozo, and then down to Avanalis Ranch Road. That's the best chance we have. A couple days ago as well, with a southwest wind push, we had a lot of fire activity that burned out towards California Valley. Those fire pushes that went out have been rung by a dozer line. Crews have gone in there. They've done a great job. We saw very, very little growth the last couple of days, and we're looking really good on that side. But through the Garcia Wilderness, that's where you've seen the majority of fire activity over the last couple of days. So we have crews in there. They're prepping the dozer line. They're prepping High Mountain Road. And what we need to do is get in there, and when the fire is going to make a run, basically towards High Mountain Road and towards Pozo. Hopefully that's a very low intensity run, but we're gonna have crews out in front, and what they're prepping to do right now is light some sort of a backfire that comes across, the goal of which is to reduce the fire intensity and widen High Mountain Road, Pozo Road, and Avanalis Ranch, and give us as much room out there with control lines, with black being a control line, towards the fire edge. So that's what crews are doing right now. Okay, enough with the map right there. So just a couple things that we're doing to also improve. We've called in one of our Huey helicopters that uses a helitorch. That helitorch will be assisting with our fire and operations that are going along, and all of that is to be able to take out some of the fuel that's in the middle of the wilderness and reduce the intensity before it hits the fire lines. So we will be using, excuse me, sorry about that. I'll get on the taller side of everything. So besides the Huey, we have some unmanned aerial supervision drones that are capable of dropping fire out of them. We can use those at nighttime when the helicopters can't fly, and they'll be assisting crews both with intelligence for how the fire is doing and to be able to reduce that fire intensity as the fire comes closer to our control lines. We do have multiple contingency lines outside of the lines that we're putting in right now. We have been planning for a couple days. Crews are getting in there. We have a lot of resources, heavy equipment, dozers, masticators, as well as a lot of hand crews that are working out there. But like I said earlier, as you know, it's very steep terrain. Fuels are extremely thick and old with very little fuel moisture in there. So with that, I would like to turn it over to the incident meteorologist, Rich Thompson.
Alrighty, good afternoon again. I'm Rich Thompson, incident meteorologist with the National Weather Service. As an incident meteorologist, or IMET for short, I am a part of a cadre of specially trained forecasters within the National Weather Service. I'm specially trained to go out on-site and provide on-site weather support to incidents such as wildfires or other big sort of impactful situations, but generally mostly wildfires. So as an IMET, I come out to a wildfire. I'm here to provide any and all weather support to the incident management team and to the firefighters. Because as you can imagine, with any wildfire, weather is probably the most dynamic thing and most important thing to know about where the fire is going to go and what it's going to do. So I'm here to provide any and all weather information to the team. That includes forecasts, weather briefings, community meetings like this, media interviews, pretty much anything they need that's weather related. I'm here to provide for the incident management team. And the reason I'm here is just for one reason only. That's keep both the firefighters safe and keep the public safe through my forecasts. And speaking of that, the forecast next couple of days, you know, the last several days has been very hot and very dry here across the area. That is unfortunately going to continue for the next 2 or 3 days. So it's going to be very hot and very dry through Tuesday. So with that, that's going to be, you know, a really, favorable conditions for the fire to continue to burn. So unfortunately, it's hot and dry the next couple of days. But looking at the second half of the week, beginning Wednesday and going through next weekend, things will actually cool off quite a bit. There'll be a dramatic cooling trend across the area with that increasing humidity, so increasing moisture. So hopefully the fire conditions will definitely improve the second half of the week. But till then, we're going to be these hot and dry conditions through Tuesday, so definitely something we'll be watching closely. Now I'd like to introduce fire behavior analyst Kevin Montoya.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Montoya. I'm the fire behavior analyst for the team. So my job is just to keep the firefighters on the ground and other parts of the staff informed of what we think the fire is going to do, hopefully before it does that. So I want to talk about a couple of things that kind of led us to where we are and why you're seeing the columns up in the air and why the fire is the size that it is. So first of all, you heard Nate talk about the fuels. The fuels conditions, the live fuels, so the parts of the plants that are alive, they're below critical. So they're at the point now where they're so lacking moisture that they burn as if they're dead. And then the dead fuels out there, we use a measurement to kind of tell if we had an ember fall out into a grass field, how likely it is to start a new fire. And it kind of works like this. If you threw 100 embers out in the field, it's a percentage. So if 90 of them started a new fire, it'd be a 90% probability of ignition. We've been between 90 and 100. So new spots from the wind and all the grass that's out here has just been a prevalent condition. The other part of it is, Nate also talked about how steep and inaccessible the terrain is. Every time the fire gets to the bottom of the slope, it's like if you held the match upside down. So it's going to make that fire increase in intensity, and it's going to run uphill until it gets a change of conditions, and that's usually the top of the slope. And then it's going to change, and it's going to be like a match held right side up. And then it's going to back down that slope with like a match's right side up until it gets to the bottom, and then rinse and repeat. And so when you're sitting here and sometimes you see a big mushroom cloud going up in the sky, that's when the match got to the bottom of the hill. It's upside down. It's making that run. And when it goes away, that's when it's got to the top of the slope and it's backing down again. And that kind of explains that upward and downward movement. And then the last thing that's kind of been adding to the size of the fire is something called mixing height. So there's a height in the atmosphere that the smoke can rise to. It's just like a ceiling. And at the beginning of the fire, the ceiling was about 8,000 feet. Now it's almost double that. And so when those fires get to the bottom of the slope and they're able to push all that heat energy up in the air, they're able to, the column's able to rise really, really high. And it's able to drop embers out further out, and it's able to draw a lot more air in because that fire breathes. Not really like a person, more like an engine. You increase the exhaust output, you're going to be able to draw more air in. So that's kind of gets us to where we are now with the overall thing. And then, unless we have any questions, I'm going to pass it along to our next speaker. We have Commander from the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department, Ian Dowdy.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Get this to the right height. My name is Ian Dowdy. I'm a commander with the Sheriff's Office. I'm here to speak a little bit of the closures that we have on roads as well as the evacuation orders that are in place. I won't go over the specific areas that have the evacuation orders. We have those on the maps. I would recommend looking at ready slow, knowing your zones for the evacuation orders. We do have the hard closures at Pozo Road and River Road, as well as Pozo Road and Santa Margarita Lake Road. So for those, generally south and east of that is where those hard closures, where those evacuation orders are, and the zones just north and west of that is where the warnings are. For the evac route, if there are, so fire did speak a little bit about a potential of a backfire that may occur. That would be, if we do that, they will evaluate to see if there's additional evacuation orders that need to occur. If that information comes out, it would be conveyed from our EOC through WIA, the Wireless Emergency Activation System, or reverse 911. Again, I would really emphasize knowing your zone. If you're in a current evacuation warning area, know your zone in case it does go to an evac order. Essentially, for a warning, we're several days into this, so most people are aware of it, but warnings, that's putting it, that this may happen. So trying to get bags packed, being aware that if it does shift to an order, we don't want to take a lot of time and you'll be able to go. If an evacuation order does come, then that is the order to leave the area. For our sheriff's office and other allied agency patrol, we will pair that with us trying to go and notify every residence as well, and driving and doing route alerting and contacting each location that we can find. Ideally, we will go from a warning to an order, but there may be times, just based on the unpredictability of the fire, that it may go straight to an evacuation order. So don't necessarily always think it would have to be a warning first. The routes generally for all of the area around that I spoke of in Pozo Road and around Santa Margarita Lake, essentially will be going west on Pozo or northwest until you can get to 58 and then going towards the freeway north or south. For any areas that have been affected by the evacuation orders, know that we do have Sheriff's Office patrol, unmarked detective units, as well as other allied agencies that are patrolling any evacuation order areas for suspicious activity, anti-looting, any potential burglary. So we are out there. Our commitment is, as long as that evac order is in place, we will have personnel there to secure your area, because we know that everyone wants to get home and it's not easy to leave your house. So we have people out there, and we are committed to doing that. So I'm happy to answer any other questions. I'll be here both for the questions on the cards or if you have any other questions afterwards. And with that, I will introduce the Chief of Staff for Supervisor Moreno, Jennifer Kinnear. Thank you.
I am not that tall. So I am speaking for Supervisor Moreno today. She has been ill this week and still trying to kick it. So I am honored to speak on her behalf and for our office today. Supervisor Moreno wanted to say thank you to all of you for coming together, having a place like this to get information, to see one another face to face, and to be able to ask your questions is so critical. A special thank you to everyone who has and is working tirelessly on the ground and behind the scenes. Our County Office of Emergency Services, CAL FIRE, Santa Margarita Fire, the Sheriff's Department, so many volunteers and support staff and community members that are stepping up in so many ways. I know I have seen so many of the great posts on social media this week. People offering to help with animals, helping to offer, housing, that sort of thing. And that's what gets us through things like this. We know this situation is difficult, and we are strong, connected community. We're here for each other, and our office is here for you to listen, to help connect you to resources, and to make sure that your concerns are heard. We are in this together, and we will get through it together. At this time, I'd like to bring up Kevin and Dustin, our incident commanders. Thank you.
All right, well, we've heard quite a bit about the plan, the operational plan, the weather, fuel conditions, which is the state of the vegetation that's out there that's burning in this fire, and what we're doing in order to make a plan out of all the items that we've talked about. So some different things to take into consideration also. You guys understand the Garcia Wilderness area, the different wilderness areas we're dealing with, because you guys are locals here, and you see the weather patterns that come in here. Obviously, this specific spot in Southern California has different weather patterns than anywhere else that you're going to see in California. The 166 corridor, obviously you have different, you have the influence of the coast, where you have weather that comes in off the coast. That could be a marine layer, that could be other things. And you have wind that goes back out to the coast, which could be dry air. You also have wind that comes out of the Salinas Valley, out of the north. And that area there makes it hard to fight fire. The other thing to think about is, obviously, when you have drought conditions, different fuels react differently. So when I say that, I'm talking about vegetation. So one thing about grass can be easier to fight fire in, but the other key with grass is it always burns fast and hot, and it's done quicker. So one thing we can do is we can take lines out to the grass, and that makes them easier to deal with in the short term. The brush species here, I just went for a flight before we got here and flew through the Garcia Wilderness. That area there is definitely thick. So for those of you who've actually been up there, you've seen it. You've got chamise, sometimes we call that grease brush, manzanita, bull pine or gray pine, and oak species, and those species are ready to burn. And the dead component in there is much higher than you see in other areas here because it has no recorded fire history. So that's all a challenge, and those are things that the team's taken into effect when we come up with what we're going to do for this plan. I'd say 75% of this fire, we're doing really well. The piece that is a challenge, but we're still doing well, is going to be the Garcia Wilderness. We get that piece tied in by a high mountain road. That's going to be our biggest challenge. We do have another plan by High Mountain Lookout to come with in the event that that doesn't work out the way we're expecting. But the overall goal is to protect all the values at risk surrounding this fire. And with this area being a priority, I'm confident that we're going to achieve that goal. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes the formal presentation of this briefing today. We're going to go into questions and answers. If you folks in the room had some questions on those cue cards, hold them up in the air. Public Information Officer will come around and grab those for you, and we'll make sure we get them to the right person to talk about it. First up, we've got a lot of questions for operations, so we're going to bring Nate back up.
All right, let's get started. Curious about how many PG&E poles have burned in the back of the Avanalis Ranch on the line going to the repeater tower in the back. So throughout the incident, power poles and power lines have been threatened. Obviously, the dual 500 kilovolt lines coming off of PG&E over to Button Willow have been threatened, and they've actually been shut down. So over the next couple days, as fire behavior lessens, we'll have an opportunity for PG&E and get it in there and do a recon. Flights, trailmen will get in there and they'll check them out. So I don't have a specific count on how many have been damaged, but they'll get in there and they'll take a look. They're hopeful they can have power back on really quickly once they start getting in there and taking a look at that. Okay, initially we saw an air striker coming from Paso Robles, but don't anymore. Have they stopped, and if so, why? So we're fortunate in this county, and especially in the portion of the fire, the Gifford fire scar, to have two reload bases for the air tankers. We have Santa Maria and we have Paso Robles as reload bases. So if you see either a decrease in activity coming from Paso over us, it could either be that there's intensity in another area of the fire that's picked up that we're focusing on, or they're coming out of Santa Maria. I can assure you, tankers have been flying over the fire every day. Especially if you're down in Santa Maria, we have a constant stream of air tankers that are flying over us, reloading out of Santa Maria, and that goes into we have Santa Margarita now, the helibase here, set up as a helitanker base. So we have a whole bunch of helitankers that are staged there. 7 are over there right now, and they're available to us to fly the fire and give a little bit more point protection and a little more precise drops than the air tankers can. Could the fire reach Santa Margarita? And there's one more about distance from Santa Margarita. So the fire is currently sitting 20 miles away from the town of Santa Margarita. There are multiple lines in place in between the fire perimeter and the town of Santa Margarita. Crews are going to do everything they can to lessen the impact to the community, especially with school starting up next Wednesday. And it's not just that, it's the multitude of values at risk that are in between the fire and the valley where all the wineries are down here and all the ranching operations. So the goal is to keep the fire as small as we can. I realize it's a fairly sizable at this point, but it's to keep it as small as we can. If the fire breaks containment in the Manchesno Wilderness, what would be the plan? So we're looking great, as I said, on the northeast corner of the fire. As it's going into the Manchesno Wilderness, it did not go into the wilderness on that side. We have been looking good for the last couple of days. But if there was something that happens, we do have contingency lines off of East Pozo Road coming through San Juan Creek and the La Panza Ranch that tie back into the Buckhorn and the Carriza, and then back to the La Panza repeater site. So there are some containment lines and some contingency lines out there that we can fall back to if we had to. One question I would like more details about the north end of Santa Margarita Lake. Not entirely sure where we're going, but CAL FIRE has been maintaining a truck trail on the north end of Santa Margarita Lake, the Blinn Ranch truck trail, or the Santa Margarita truck trail since the 50s. That truck trail maintains out over there, as well as the McNeil that comes off of Pozo and wraps around to the horse corrals off of River Road. So we have some existing lines in there and some familiarity with the terrain. We'd be able to get in there and handle everything quickly. Like Chief said, as they were up here, we have the right people in place. We have a lot of resources, and our probability of success as we're going through is we have a lot of hope and a lot of confidence in the plan that they have going on. Did the Avalanche Ranch headquarters burn down? No, they did not. We do have quite a few people that are on the fire right now performing damage inspections. Wherever there is a reported structure loss or structures in the area, we have damage inspectors that are driving around, looking at those structures, looking at infrastructure, and seeing what the impact was. So that is ongoing. That started in the south. And as the fire activity lessens, they get in there and they check out whatever structures or infrastructure might have been damaged. How are you protecting South San Luis Obispo at Orchid Road and Sequoia? So there is the 2015 Cuesta fire that threatened the town of Santa Margarita. We put in quite a few extra lines, some contingency lines, going through the wilderness from Mount Low to Burrito Creek, and then pushing all the way south on Cuesta Ridge, and those lines are being opened up again. Right, they're there. They're just a little bit overgrown. So it hopefully is a quick push for the bulldozers, the heavy equipment, but they're opening those lines up right now, and we're hoping to take that all the way down to Lopez Lake. So if something were to squirt out on the on the high mountain side, near High Mountain Lookout, we're going to be putting contingency lines in as we can, as time and resources allow. So lighting backfire on Pozo, it's a little bit of a dance. As the weather changes, as the wind changes directions, crews have to be extremely coordinated, confident in each other. Specifically, they're going to be coming north on Avalanche Ranch Road towards Pozo. They'll be coming hopefully along the Salinas River, bringing back into High Mountain Road where the low water crossing is, and then coming on High Mountain Road specifically up to the lookout, and then down towards Sausalito Canyon. But they're putting in some dozer lines on that side of High Mountain Road near Lopez. So hopefully that answers that question for you guys. And one more. Do you think the Gifford will continue to burn in the northwest direction, and if so, how far? So that is the purpose of the fire and operation that we're coming up with right now, is to lower the intensity and widen the control lines on the northwest corner off of High Mountain Road and give us as much chance as we can to hold the fire on High Mountain, lower the fire intensity as it comes close by, and give us the highest probability of success over there. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. Next, we got some more questions. We're going to go ahead and bring up Chief Bohal.
So I do like to talk about community involvement. You guys are definitely an involved community. There's a lot of good questions, so that's good. Have any homes been lost? So what we do is we have damage inspection teams that come in and do an assessment after the fire front goes through, and we see if there's stuff that's damaged or destroyed. And right now we have one destroyed residential structure and one non-residential, and they're both in Santa Barbara County. Obviously, we're still continuing with that damage inspection as the fire goes on, so more info on that as we go. If the fire starts to threaten the town, will retardant be dropped to the east to slow stall the fire? So yeah, we utilize retardant where we can. So one thing about fixed-wing aircraft, they can't fly in the smoke for the most part to drop retardant. So where we have opportunities, you'll see there's a lot of red areas out there if you're looking at the alert wildfire cameras and things like that. A lot of that's from fixed-wing aircraft, and we also have what we call MRBs, mobile retardant bases, that we utilize for helicopters to drop retardant also. So any opportunities we have to do that where it's going to be effective, we're going to do that. All right, I got a couple good ones here. So would regular prescribed fire reduce the severity of this fire? Would control burns, I think it's when do you start control burns. So I think that would go with the firing, the plan that we were just talking about. But I'll talk about prescribed fire because that's actually one I'm pretty passionate about anyway. So understanding one of the things obviously that's been somewhat excluded from California is fires that used to happen prior to colonization. So one of the things is somehow we have to reduce the fuels, whether it's mechanical, grazing, it could be mastication, it could be dozer work, all these other things, but prescribed fire is a good way in the right scenario in order to reduce fuels to stop a threat to a fire. And we actually have a few really good examples here in San Luis Obispo County that have been done in the past where we've had some success stories because of that. The big thing is if you're going to do fuels treatment, you have to look at what you're trying to achieve, what are the objectives of the landowner, because it's obviously owned by a lot of different people or entities. and making sure that you're going to meet those objectives. And every treatment method is not going to be the same for every acre across this state. So prescribed fire, absolutely a great tool. Cost per acre can be a lot less than some of the other treatment methods, and you could get a desirable outcome. Let's see, fireworks legislation. Every county has different stances on fireworks. So some of them they're illegal, some of them it's illegal in the county, but it's legal in city jurisdictions, things like that. But that's definitely a consideration for different areas. And obviously fireworks are a hazard, and using illegal fireworks that aren't safe and sane is something that we've all seen that can definitely cause damage to property and be a threat to people's lives. So definitely not the thing to do. Weed abatement enforcement. So I'm going to talk about defensible space next. But as far as weed abatement, specific weed abatement ordinances are specific to different jurisdictions. So if you're in a incorporated city or different fire districts, there are areas that have weed abatement ordinances, but it's going to depend on where you're at. What were the setbacks requirements for fire protection in SLO County? So I was going to talk very generally about defensible space. So obviously state law in state direct protection area is that 100-foot defensible space. We talk about one area called the 0 zone. That's the first 5 feet. We recommend not to have any vegetation at all. And then from 5 to 30 to have reduced vegetation, and for 30 to 100 to reduce the vegetation, but it doesn't have to be as reduced. For those that are larger landowners or have larger lots, I would always recommend reducing fuels where you can. Understanding, obviously some of these areas, Pozo, areas like that, grazing is a really good tool. And understanding that obviously you need feed for your cattle throughout the summer and into the winter months. So there might be areas you graze first that are going to be conducive to protecting property or ranch infrastructure and things along those lines. Yeah, I think that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Next, we got a question for weather. We'll go ahead and bring Rich back up.
Alrighty, hello again. The question I have here is, could you please speak to fire behavior and weather across Santa Margarita Lake? Well, as I said when I was up here earlier, it's going to be very hot and dry conditions across the area the next couple of days. That includes Santa Margarita Lake. Probably see temperatures the next couple of days well into the 90s, so very hot out there, and very dry. Humidity is probably dropping down each day into like the 15 to 25% range, if not a little bit lower. So definitely very hot and very dry over there, over Santa Margarita Lake. Today through Tuesday, but then again from Wednesday through the end of next weekend, things are going to cool off very noticeably. So by next weekend, you'll probably see temperatures in the 70s and 80s across the area. So get through the next couple of days with the heat, then there is definitely some relief on the way the second half of the week and into next weekend.
Thanks, Rich. All right, we got some more operational questions. Now we're going to bring up Spencer Andreas with Team 5, our operations section chief.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to give Nate a break here. First question, are the tankers flying at night? So air tankers are the fixed wing, the planes, they do not fly at night. However, we do have 3 assigned night flying helicopters that do fly at night, along with a Helco, which is a helicopter for the aerial supervision. Next question, where would the backfire be most likely located? So it's pretty much around the footprint of the Garcia Wilderness. I'm going to put this up here so I don't have to crouch. So High Mountain, Caldwell Mesa, and Avenales Road. So it's basically within that footprint is where we're doing all of the prep work. And then the second part of the question is, should we leave full electric on or just well pumps? So if you still have power, you're fine at this point. If PG&E, if we feel there's a need to shut that off, we will shut it off, okay? Next question, how close is the fire to Creston? And it's about 22 miles.
I am not that tall. All right, we're going to go ahead and bring up our commander. We got some questions about roadways.
And I'll move it back up. All right, everyone, thank you. So for the first question I have is, if the fire jumps High Mountain Road, how can I be notified when and if that happens? The best thing we'd recommend is going to Alert Slow, the website. You can register your phone number there, your cell phone, so it will be a part of the reverse 911s. As I mentioned, the Emergency Operations Center, they'll issue the wireless emergency alerts. Those are the ones that goes off on everyone's phone, but they'll also try to pair that with reverse 911s. And again, that is alertslow.com or .org. If you Google it, I'm sure you'll be able to tell. And I think we have resources that point to that in the back as well. But another question I have is a little specific for someone who lives on Park Hill Road and River Road. It sounds like one side of the property is affected by an evacuation warning, another side by evacuation order. But to access the property, if I'm reading the question, is through the evacuation order past a hard closure. If I'm not getting that question right, please speak to me afterwards. Essentially, what I would believe on this is, I believe the question is, how do I get past the hard closure to get to my rural property or my property, which is halfway in between? The best thing I would recommend is, if you haven't access to your property through the evacuation warning route, take that. If it has to go through the evacuation order route through that hard closure, go to the hard closure, speak to the deputy or the highway patrol officer there, show your license, show your proof of residency. It is the officer's discretion, when we let people past hard closures, but we know that there are unique situations, especially in landscapes and communities such as this. So that would be my best recommendation. And again, if I'm not getting that question right, please speak to me after. The last one I have is, when will Highway 166 be open to residents? Just speaking with the team here, it sounds like Caltrans is doing active work on 166 to repair damages, so that's probably going to be one of the largest contributing factors to reopening it. In general, with hard closures or lifting evacuation orders, we want to try to get people back and repopulate people back to their homes as soon as we can. We just want to make sure that when we're able to do that, it's safe to do so. The last thing we would want is to lift an order, clear a roadway, have people go back home, and then issue another evacuation order very shortly after, because that can lead to fatigue and people not necessarily wanting to listen to the order. So for 166 specifically, I believe we're waiting on Caltrans, and then that's also going to be that combination of evaluating where the fire is at, what it's doing, what that potential is to lift those closures and the evacuation orders. If you have any other questions, I got one more. I didn't get a prep for this one, so we'll see. Can there be times dedicated to Cuyama locals to go to work in the AM and return home? That one I think is going to be a little bit specific, as just like I talked about, of trying to get that, if there's a hard closure on 166, to shifting it to a soft closure to allow people to go in and out who have business or are residents of those locations. For that, any of the closures are analyzed and looked at multiple times throughout the day by Unified Command, by the Emergency Operations Center, to see if we can lift that, because we want to get back to some normalcy. So I would like to think that we can get to that soon, but that decision will have to be made in conjunction with all the personnel here. Good? No others? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. The Sheriff's Office is happy to support the community. We're here for you guys. If there's anything I can do afterwards, please flag me down. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commander. We got a question from the floor, so we'll go ahead and bring Chris up.
Okay, so the intellect of the audience is reflected in the number of people it takes to answer all these questions, so nice work. So first question, what cultural resources are being protected and how are they being protected? That's a great question. There are a tremendous amount of resources out there. We spoke about the historic guard station, but in addition to that, there's all kinds of prehistoric sites and artifacts out there going back thousands of years old. And so what we do is the forest engages the archaeologists on staff. They have a lot of data available, the inventory that they currently have for the forest as far as what's out there. But that's not comprehensive. There are often areas that still haven't been surveyed, and there's sites that we may not have found yet. And so we make the assumption we don't know everything that's out there. We actually bring in resource advisors to work with our operations folks and our firefighters actually constructing line out there in the field. And they work hand in hand to identify anything potentially that we were unaware of that might be up ahead of some of that line construction. That team of resource advisors has archaeologists, it has cultural specialists. We even have several members of the Chumash tribe that are trained in firefighting, embedded and working directly with those resource advisors assigned to the fire. And in addition to that, I see he walked in the back here, so we've got a tribal liaison, Mr. Pete there in the back, and he's interacting both with the tribe and the resource advisors and our liaison officers on this incident. And so long story short, we're doing as much as we can to inform what's being done, trying to minimize negative impacts to those resources, and recognize, this is not the first time those have seen fire. And sometimes the bigger risk can be the actual suppression to that. That said, we have to make some challenging decisions, and we're trying to put this fire out. So that might just give you a little bit of a glimpse into what we have to think about. So next question. Is Figueroa Mountain open in Santa Barbara County? Currently, it is not. The forest has issued a closure order for the Santa Lucia Ranger District and a sliver of the Mount Pinos District in that Santa Barbara Canyon area. And so if you look at a map, Figueroa Mountain is just inside Santa Lucia District. And so currently that is closed. The approach that the forest made was we started work on this order a few days ago. The fire had growth potential in every direction. And so with priority number one being public and firefighter safety, we wanted to try to close that district and allow for complete access and lots of traffic from firefighters to be able to access that area. Now, as we go forward, the forest has the ability to adjust that forest order, and as the opportunities come up, we may be able to shrink that to provide and reopen for public access. And so we appreciate your patience with that, and thinking big picture, our goal is to manage this for you. We work for you, and we're trying to make the best decisions that we can as we go forward. So last question. Are we getting an exemption to bring mechanical assets into the wilderness? Who do we contact about this? So very good question. That's one of those other challenges that I've been hinting at. And so when we are looking at this fire, there's a number of wilderness areas affected. Santa Lucia, Machesna Mountain, we've got Garcia, we've got San Rafael. All of those have played a role in our planning and our operations of this. From a management standpoint and making decisions, what we try to do is we're going to try to minimize the impacts and negative effects to the wilderness, but we're going to use that prioritization I spoke of earlier. So life and property, infrastructure, natural and cultural resources. And so if we do need to intrude into the wilderness, generally our first choice is to construct hand line, and that does come down to a decision. My standpoint is if we're going to risk firefighter safety by putting them in that situation, we're going to allow them all the tools that they're able to carry with them. And so we're going to authorize chainsaw use, for example, instead of forcing them to use hand tools and without gasoline and that kind of thing. So there's one example where we're allowing an exemption. Other things that we've done, we've allowed a heliport, I should say helispot, not a heliport. So a small clearing that allows us to shuttle in hand crews, in particular that southern area of the fire in the San Rafael wilderness, so that we can get those crews in and out safely. They don't have to have a grueling, multi-hour hike up and down thousands of feet to get into their project site. And so there's another example. The third thing we've authorized, and all of these are not carte blanche, it's with close communications and decision making, but we have allowed retardant from our aerial resources to be placed in the wilderness. Now we've got no retardant zones, riparian areas, things like that. Also, some of those cultural sites that I spoke of are areas that we do not want to paint with retardant. But in general, if there's an opportunity, that's another one we've authorized. And then our last resort is allowing bulldozers and other large heavy equipment into the wilderness. There are a couple examples where we've made that authorization for the team in close communication about probability of success, and again, looking at those values. But like I said, that's a last resort, but it is a tool that we are considering and have been allowing in certain places on this fire. So, excellent questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. So we got some more questions for ops. I think we let Nate have enough breaks. We're going to bring him back up.
All right, back at it again, guys. A general outlook for the Red Hill Road area. So Red Hill Road, Novel Flats, still quite a bit north of the fire on the other side of East Poser Road. So outlook is still looking really good for the community that's back off of Red Hill Road, closer to Novel Flats, and the recreation sites that are over there. Was the Ag Pass program helpful during this fire? I don't believe the Ag Pass program holders utilized it at all to get in on this one. So I know Santa Barbara County had quite a few temporary Ag Pass permits issued. I don't think San Luis Obispo did have any issued on this one. We're trying to give wide distribution to the Ag Pass program as it is. So basically, if you have over 40 acres and you get some income, you derive some income from your property, you are eligible to take part in the Ag Pass program. You come to a 4-hour class taught by CAL FIRE in conjunction with the Ag Commissioner and sponsored by the Board of Supervisors. And with that, you get a card that, notwithstanding some exceptions, would allow you the opportunity to come through a road closure, to go in there, move some cattle, do some things around your property as you need to. So in San Luis Obispo County specifically, no Ag Pass users took advantage of that. I am on Wasna Road, 6 miles away from town site. Any new info? The fire, as I mentioned earlier, the fire on the western edge that was progressing towards Wasna town site, and the ranches back there. We've made a pretty good stop over there. It has not progressed farther the last couple of days. Crews are improving existing control lines, and we're looking pretty good on that side of the fire. So no new info as opposed to what we've had the last couple of days. Next step for that, as well as any section of the fire, wherever we put dozer line, hand line, we're going to go in there and we're going to perform some sort of suppression repair after the fire. So part of the reason there are still evac orders and warnings in areas where you might not expect them to be is for the use of suppression repair resources come back in, just make sure that everything's safe as they're doing that. What would it take to get the railroad to clear weeds off of their property? So I'm going to punt this to my partner, the county fire marshal, and you can notify him of your concerns. We're very fortunate, right? There are not a lot of starts that come off the train tracks and the railroad tracks that move through the county. We don't have a lot of ignitions that come off of that. So not a high concern, although I do understand where the question comes from. As concerns come up, if you can push those to the county fire marshal, that would be the most appropriate medium for your concerns right there. Is there a map showing DINS evaluations? So we do have a DINS map program that comes out. This fire has not reached the threshold to provide a forward-facing map. Structure damage generally comes from the county that occurs in, so the county has responsibility to kind of notice the property owner and make notice of that damage that has occurred. So on this one, there is no forward-facing DINS map that shows evaluations. Is the fire near East Posa Road and Park Hill or Blake Lane? The fire in operation, the planned fire in operation, is going to go to Avanalis and the Salinas River and then progress to the west towards Pozo. East Posa Road at Avanalis Ranch Road is a contingency line or an alternate line for us, but hopefully the fire does not get there. The plan is not to allow fire to get to East Posa Road near Avanalis or in the community of Pozo, other than coming along the Salinas River. Is it safe to land at Slow Airport? I believe this is related to the temporary shutdown related to some electrical closures. I'm not entirely sure. Yes, civilian emergency personnel, life safety is of the utmost concern to all of us. And if there was a concern that it was not safe to land at the airport, that would be brought to the community and would be decided on. But as of right now, yes. If there is another question about that, though, you can come up and see us at the end. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nate. We got some more questions for Chief Bohal.
Well, I would like to make a quick joke and say you guys are sweating me with these questions, but it's just warm in here. So back to the prescribed fire questions, and if somebody has specific ones when we're done too, I could talk to them over on the side. So can small property landowners do control burns? And the answer is yes. Obviously, if it's in the state direct protection area, it comes to be one of those things where you get a permit with CAL FIRE. That's either a LE62A, which is a dooryard permit, an LE5 for large pile, or an LE7 for broadcast burn. The LE7, you provide a burn plan, and then the only other thing you need on top of that is an air pollution control district permit. When they issue those permits, and I won't speak specifically for them, but they look at air quality and what else is going on in that air shed and how it's going to affect other air sheds. If it's in a local jurisdiction, obviously you go through the local jurisdiction process, and you would still look at the air pollution control district permit. So this is a good one. When is the soonest our county will be out of harm's way? So the one I'll give you a guarantee for is when we have considerable precip and weather conditions that cause that we're not going to have substantial wildfires anymore, which I know that was really vague, which is usually in the wintertime months. What I would say, the shortest version is when we get a change in the weather, typically we start doing a lot better on these fires. We start getting around them quicker, starting being able to put more containment line, and obviously that's when we start feeling really good. We start lifting evacuation warnings and orders. Then we're in that route. In my mind, the earliest would be sometime in September, and then it could go as late into somewhere in October, November, depending on what happens in some of the areas that are more remote and continue to burn. But there's going to be certain areas of the fire. Obviously, you see your evacuation orders and warnings going away. Then that means that we're feeling really good about that area. And when you look at the maps, you can see here on the walls where there's black on the map there, that's containment line. That's the pieces that we're saying we feel good about, that it's not going to come out of those specific areas. And then the red areas are the areas that we're still working on. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. And just when Nate thought he was done, we're bringing him back up.
All right, a question about the danger of the area at Park Hill, Ware, and Las Politas. As we've been talking about, we have multiple contingency lines outside of what is going to be the expected fire perimeter as the fire is coming closer. We're very lucky in this county that our GIS through County Fire Department and through CAL FIRE have created a mass amount of pre-attack maps that have identified values at risk, critical threats, residences, addresses, and we have those boxes staged at the Park Hill Fire Station available for every first responder that comes out to the incident that we can distribute in a moment's notice. So as there are multiple contingency lines, and I mentioned the McNeil Truck Trail, the Santa Margarita Truck Trail, Bellman, Calf Canyon, the multitude that I maintain every year in my battalion, in Battalion 4, we have a really good information sharing system that we can get to resources as they're responding immediately. So the danger as it progresses out is just as anything. And Chief Bohal mentioned that the danger won't leave us until it rains in the wintertime. This fire is going to progress closer to Pozo. We have resources in place to handle that. We have extremely competent and capable resources that are out there to handle that. We have surged in hotshot crews from around the state to back them up specifically for the operation that's going on. The danger to Park Hill, Las Palitas, Warwaro is as minimal as we can make it at this point. And we have every confidence in our crews that they're going to be successful. With that, we have an extremely good mapping system and information sharing system that's in place as a contingency.
All right, I think we're done with Nate. We'll see. All right, so next up, I want to bring up from SLO County Office of Emergency Management, Scotty Jalbert.
So good afternoon. My name is Scott Jalbert. I'm the director for the County Office of Emergency Services. You're going to have to excuse me. I'm kind of working my way through a cold here. Our office basically is involved in 3 different ways on this incident. We are responsible for coordinating all the efforts on the incident outside of the law enforcement and fire response. We provide public information about the incident, but more specifically about the evacuations and what those look like and where those are at. But probably the most important responsibility that we have is to provide alert and warning to the public. And we do all of this through our Emergency Operations Center that's currently activated. I have a whole host of websites and numbers for you that no one's going to remember. If you walk away from anything from me today, is remember ReadySLO, SLO.org. And from there, you can get everything that you need to know for our office. And there's a big red button in the middle that says Current Emergency Information. So if you click on that, you can eventually navigate your way through things. On there, you can find some information about knowing your zone, which zone that you live in, what the current evacuation orders and warnings are. We have maps and we have descriptive locations of what those look like. And then we also provide some incident information that we get from the incident. As far as phone numbers go, we have several different phone numbers, but the one that you should probably know is if anybody has any questions, they can call our phone assistance center at 805-543-2444. I'll say that one more time, 805-543-2444. We also have some other numbers on the back. There's that flyer. We have a flyer there that will have all the numbers, all the websites, and a QR code. But some of the information that you'll find is about animal assistance, large animal, housing, and assistance, and then specifically for our horse emergency evacuation team if you have some horses. As you heard through the different presentations, we talked about alert and warnings. If the incident makes a decision to expand the alerts and warnings in regards to evacuation orders and warnings, that will come from our office. And we will do that in 2 different ways. The first way we will do that is issue a wireless emergency alert, and all phones are WIA, what we call WIA capable. Unless you turn that off, you should get that alert. And everyone's probably heard that really scary alert in 2 o'clock in the morning, right? So you will receive that alert. The second way to do, second thing we will use is our reverse 911 system. Now, those of you that still have a landline, you will automatically get a call if you're in the area of the evacuation order or warning. But if you do not have a landline, you will not receive that unless you opt in. So another website to remember is alertslo.org, alertslo.org, and there you can sign up for reverse 911, and you can also sign up to receive emergency alerts outside of the WIA capabilities. We are utilizing zones, so we have a campaign that says Know Your Zone. So when we get into the situation and we're doing large-scale evacuations, you'll see in the news, you'll see on the website, you'll see on watch duty, you'll see evacuations for SLC-013, whatever the number is. It's important that all of you know your zone ahead of time, and if you go there and we have a link on there that you can type in your address, you can find your address, and then you'll know what zone that you are in. So when we call for those orders or warnings, or hopefully soon repopulation, you'll be notified based on those zone areas. Sometimes when we send out the WIAs, they're a little confusing, and that's because we're limited for the amount of information that we can actually put in those alerts. So we refer everybody to go to the website to get further information, but at a minimum, you'll get what the protective action is, if it's a warning or an order, or to repopulate the zone number, and then you'll have the website to go to figure out some more information. A big thing that our office does is coordinate. We work very closely, as like I said, with different agencies outside the fire and law. We do work a lot with fire and law, but probably the biggest thing we do is care and shelter. So information in regards to sheltering. So we're going to be opening up a new shelter location here at the New Life Student Center. That will be open today. And then in the event that we have to expand evacuations and orders, we will utilize the ABC Church, the Atascadero Bible Church in Atascadero as a secondary evacuation center. Lots of people have animals, so we have 2 large animal locations that you can bring your animals to. One is the Santa Maria Elks Rodeo Grounds, and the second one is the Paso Robles Event Center up in North County. If you have small animals or domestic animals, and for whatever reason you cannot take them with you, you can leave them at the Animal Services shelter over on Oklahoma Avenue, just off Highway 1. And just keep in mind that our evacuation centers are pet friendly. You can bring your pets, so don't be afraid to do that. And I'll be available for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. We got some questions about the cause of the fire. The cause is still being actively investigated right now. So again, under investigation. If we find anything out, we'll definitely let folks know. Another question was about volunteering and any donations needed to the firefighters. Firefighters are completely stocked with food, water. I mean, our incident command base has showers out there, has laundry out there, has a feeding area. We have everything we need for our firefighters, so thank you very much. But we do not need donations. Appreciate that. Volunteers, we can't support volunteers either at this point, but look afterwards, after the fire's done. Look with your local agencies, go to the forest and see if they need some volunteer help after that. Our folks are going to be around, our subject matter experts will be around the room after this if you want to talk to them. We've got maps around the room. We've also got the current evacuation warnings and order map, so come talk to folks afterwards. That's all the questions that we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Keep a lookout. We might have some more public meetings. We're planning one for tomorrow in San Luis Obispo. So thank you again. Have a great evening.